Let's go, girls. Welcome to Talk Wealthy to Me. I'm Michelle Taylor, founder of Women in Wealth. From breaking money myths to building wealth and achieving financial freedom, we're here to empower you to create your own path. Talk Wealthy. Now, join the conversation and let's change the way women think and feel about money. Okay, ready? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Talk Wealthy to Me podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Taylor, and I am so excited that you're here and also really encouraged to go over this topic with you guys. Quite a few people have mentioned that this is either something that they're faced with or a woman in their family is faced with, and that is navigating what financial freedom and wellness and planning looks like after a divorce. Now, I thankfully have never been through this myself, but I know a lot of people who have, and I've had firsthand experiences with clients that are really discouraging when it comes to this topic. I've had clients tell me that they didn't know how to pay their electric bill because their husband left them, and it wasn't a lack of finances, but it was just genuinely not knowing how to navigate that situation. So as always, my hope in this is that anybody going through it or knows somebody that is will be able to take something tangible and turn what can be scary into something that they feel empowered and encouraged around, and change the impact that something heavy will have on the rest of their life. So one of the important things to know about all of this is obviously this is a big deal. It's a big life-changing event, and I think it's so important to acknowledge that and find the support that you need from the people that you care about in your life. And my goal in this is to really just focus on the financials, but I think that it would be really important for anybody listening that has this experience to really identify the areas they need help and the professionals that they need to seek out to make sure that you come to the other side of this feeling like yourself or a better version of yourself. I think that the grief, the sadness of this is actually something you're having to deal with is something that's going to be a hard pill to swallow. But again, taking the emotion out of this, which is going to be really tricky, but taking the emotion out of planning financially after divorce is going to be really important. So one of the things that I would suggest is building out that same board of advisors that we've talked about in other episodes, finding the people that you need to count on to understand what's in your best interest, what you are entitled to, and figuring out how to navigate this path moving forward. So what does that mean? Obviously, I would probably advise none of you to go through this without an attorney. Certainly, I am not an attorney. This is just my opinion, but I feel like there are a lot of pieces to this that you may not even realize you're dealing with. So find an attorney that's good, that makes you feel comfortable, makes you feel seen, heard, and that they're an advocate of yours. The next piece is finding somebody to probably navigate the family emotional journey of this, if you've got kiddos, but also really recognizing and understand that once you get over this hump and once you figure this out, you're getting a fresh start. You're going to be able to plan for yourself financially. And although it's something that's really sad, there is something that is, I think, exciting if you think about a fresh start and focusing on the financial goals and plan that you have for yourself and not having to consider anybody else and what they want. So hopefully putting a positive spin on that and really focusing on a fresh start and building something for yourself with the right relationships in place to ensure that the next chapter is one of your best chapters. How do we do that? First things first, if you've ever worked with a financial advisor and had a relationship with one that your spouse had brought into your situation, I would say to really dive into that and see if that's a relationship that you want to keep. Now, obviously, this is my world. I know a little bit about this. I've had several clients divorce, and some of them don't care if both parties work with me. Other people think, you know what, the relationship with Michelle was yours. I'm going to find somebody else. And that's okay too. So I think what really matters is the connection that you feel with that professional. So if you feel like you want to keep that person in your life, I would have very clear expectations around confidentiality, which of course is part of our role as fiduciaries, but also just making sure that you have somebody that can advocate and plan in a totally different way with you without it being in direct conflict with the other ex-spouse. If you feel a little bit uncertain about that, I would say first, if you like the firm, you can find another advisor within that firm usually. And that's a really easy transition and probably less clunky for you going through enough as it is. Or if you really felt like this was never your relationship, that you were present in the meetings but didn't say much, now is your chance to really figure out what this relationship will look like for you. If you want to know the questions to ask, I am happy to send you a copy of that. Drop me a DM. But ultimately, you want to go into this with a clear mind and figuring out what's most important. How do you want to work with that professional? And source that person and interview a few of them. Don't feel like there's any fire to put out. We all have the same tools in our toolbox. Truly, it's about finding the relationship that's going to work for you and your future as you navigate this next chapter. The second piece of that is really understanding your money landscape. And again, I'm going to assume that half of you have maybe led the charge with financials and the other half didn't. So if the latter is the case and you were really leading the charge, more than likely you're going to have a good handle on what your monthly budget and what your monthly spending plan is going to look like. It's really important to understand the money that's coming in and going out and what your expenses are going to be moving forward. Obviously, assuming there's child support or any alimony, any of those payments are something to consider. But you really just want to identify the non-negotiables, the things that have to get paid, and make sure as a single income household, you have the most important things covered so that your kids and yourself aren't having to navigate a change in life, but also now a change in circumstance where things are feeling tighter and more insecure for you or your kids. Understanding the difference between needs and wants is really important, and then just having a plan for every dollar coming in. Once you understand the money that you're working with, I encourage everybody to figure out how to live in an and mentality. So more than likely, there's been a lot of financial fallout from this, right? So we want to make sure that you are doing all of the same things you were doing with a partner, but now as an individual. So what does that mean? I want to make sure that you guys are paying off any debt that you have and saving and making sure you have enough liquid and investing. Make sure that you're not neglecting any of those things. It's really important once you sit down, you know what this household now looks like based on just your income. We now have an opportunity to reverse engineer what the future looks like and what we need to do to get you there. It's going to be really important that you sit down and have all of the pieces of your puzzle in front of you and understand, were you counting on retirement coming from your spouse? If that's the case, we need to focus on how do we fill that retirement bucket? Maybe you need to start your own IRA on the side or start contributing to a 401k if you have the opportunity. But we want to make sure that we've got those long-term dollars planned for. Midterm dollars is really just understanding those goals, vacations for your family, education expenses, things that you can anticipate but are still 6 months to 2 years down the road. Maybe there's a project at the house, that a renovation. And we need to put that money aside and make sure that you're planning for that effectively so that you're not going into debt to do something that you've already committed to doing. And then obviously, we want to make sure short term, that may look a lot different now as well. If during the divorce, the assets split, there's more or less debt, we want to just make sure that what you have is covered by an emergency account. You don't want to have too much in cash. And that's an exercise that unfortunately I can't personalize in this episode for you. But I would always challenge you, if you work in a W-2 setting, you want to have 3 months at least of your expenses. And that isn't food and fun. That is truly keeping your lights on and making sure that you are paying your obligations. If you're a self-employed individual or somebody that works in a highly commissioned role, you probably want to have closer to 6 months just to make sure that there's the ebbs and flows of what that can feel like don't impact you, especially if you had another income to fall back on, and ultimately understanding where those dollars are going. So of those monies, we want to make sure that we're doing, remember, the and mentality. So make sure that you are putting money into a retirement account for long-term dollars or planning for what it looks like if you are selling a business 10 years down the road. We want to make sure that you're paying down your debt, and we want to make sure you're investing. Now, for anybody that is not familiar with how to invest, that's where we need to really break this down and understand what the priority is. If the priority is to just put money to work for you so that you have it working for you while you sleep, the easiest way to do that is to work with that trusted advisor that you either have identified or already have a relationship with, or just start something on your own. You can go to any of the big broker dealers like a Charles Schwab, Edward Jones, anything like that really, Robinhood even, and just start an account and start investing. Even if it's $25, $100, whatever it is that you can afford, to make sure that the retirement you once thought was covered with 2 incomes, now we're identifying how do we get there with only 1 income. The good news is you only have to pay for yourself in this retirement and don't have to worry about providing for 2. So it should be relatively easy to make the adjustment. But again, you don't want to forget that any of these pieces are on the table and need to be addressed. Speaking of investing, it's really important. And this is why, you guys, I brought up the point about having the trusted relationship that you can fight for your best interest at the table. So a lot of people will think that they're negotiating something that's going to be really good for them and their family and keeping attorneys out of the picture. But there's a lot of things to consider. For example, if you are a stay-at-home spouse and you have been focusing on the family while the other spouse is out earning the income and contributing to a retirement account, you've missed a lot of time to contribute to your own retirement because you thought you had a partner doing that for you. So there's something called a quid pro, and that is basically where anything that a spouse has put into a retirement account while you all were married, you're entitled to half of that. Now, when you typically take money out of a retirement account prematurely or before your retirement age, there's a penalty. What's really lovely about this is in a divorce, if it's navigated with professionals, you are able to take half of that account and you will not pay a penalty for moving it over to you and being able to utilize that money for your own retirement planning. So that's really important. We want to make sure that you have all of the access to the accounts that you need to plan for your future and aren't missing anything. I will hopefully put your mind at ease if this is a situation where it's not warm and fuzzy. There are very few ways that somebody can really hide money and not give you what you're entitled for. But that requires having the relationship there that's going to walk you through this and make sure that you're asking the right questions. I once had a client that her husband just said, "Oh, I cleared everything out of my retirement account because I'm doing this other thing." Well, then she's surprised that she's getting divorced and Thankfully, because of forensic accounting, we were able, not we, I didn't do that, but she was able with those relationships to understand this is where the money went and she was still entitled to half of it. And hopefully that's not going to be a situation that any of you find yourselves in. But I just cannot emphasize enough. It's really important to not leave what you are rightfully entitled to on the table because you've got to be your number one advocate. So understand the retirement accounts, the assets that you have, the debt you have. Don't leave any of that up to chance. We want to make sure that all of your bases are covered. And in that, your risk tolerance, the time horizon, all of the pieces that will kind of navigate what the rest of your life look like may have changed. Maybe you were married to somebody that didn't like risk at all, or maybe on the other side, they were much more aggressive than you felt comfortable being. All of these things you're going to have to navigate in order to understand how to move forward. If you want to be more conservative, make sure that the advisor that you're using or the advisor that you were using with your spouse understands that there's been a shift. And really make sure that you're putting your money into investments that are in alignment with what your risk tolerance is and time horizon. Depending on your age, it will impact when you can access these things. Retirement age is 59 and a half. So you want to make sure that when you're putting money away, and if retirement accounts are something new for you, that you're cognizant of that. You can't touch these accounts without a penalty before that age. So make sure that we've got those midterm and short-term buckets addressed before you put money into a retirement account. Also, as far as timeline goes, if you've got big projects that are going on, or just you feel a little bit more comfortable having access to that money, we want to make sure that you're putting the dollars into just your typical individual account or a brokerage account. This is going to give you access to money growing and not being out of the market, putting your money to work for you, but without those same restrictions. The other thing you want to look at is benefits. If your spouse was providing health benefits, there's some navigating there, but also like insurances. A lot of times when there's a divorce and if there's life insurance and there's children involved or alimony, those are things that you want to address. You want to make sure that, God forbid, if something were happening to a spouse and they are paying you alimony and child support, that there's a death benefit there that would still get you to the point that you need to be at and taking care of your kids, that the child support and all of that is protected and addressed with the life insurance. And most divorce attorneys will navigate through all of these pieces with you. But again, make sure that you're understanding what you're entitled to and not leaving anything up to chance. As we wrap this up, guys, one of the most important things and reasons that I'm doing this, not only Women in Wealth, but Talk Wealthy to Me, is because I want you guys to be empowered around money. I want you to understand the decisions that you have to make, that you're entitled to make, and I want you to feel like you are in charge of your money story. Going through this is going to be a huge emotional toll, but the reality is 1 out of every 2 marriages is going to end in divorce. So I want to make sure that you all take away from this that 1, you're allowed to be upset and grieve this transition in your life. But then I want you as quickly as you can to pivot and really focus on writing your own money story. Try not to bring the baggage that comes with a failed marriage and maybe differing approaches and beliefs around money with you. Look at this as a fresh start, a way to make sure that you are doing everything that you can to set yourself up for success in a retirement that feels really good to you or a next chapter that feels good to you, building something out with your goals in mind, with your risk tolerance in mind, and making as few waves as possible within your home so that if there are kiddos, they don't feel a change in lifestyle. And I know all of this is easier said than done, but that's where I'm here to be a resource in any way that I can. If there's anything that you need to make this transition easier, please send me a message or a DM. and the team will get you anything that you need. Ask the right questions of any advisor or other professional that you're bringing to the table, and make sure that you know what you are allowed to fight for. Make sure that you are living in an and universe, that you are reevaluating how much cash you need to have on hand and making sure that you do, and that you're investing, even if it's a small amount, and that you're paying down any debt that you have, whether it's yours or part of the marriage, but ultimately doing all three of those things to move forward and put the best version of yourself and your future in your windshield instead of your rearview mirror. As always, please continue to like, share, subscribe, and if there's anybody going through this that you think would benefit from hearing the episode, please share. And again, let's change the way women think and feel about money together.